There are hundreds of inmates inside Scott and Rock Island County jails right now. While their criminal charges vary, the impact of their incarceration shapes neighborhoods and communities. Tonight, in the first part of a special series, KWQC's Morgan Ottier takes an in-depth look at local crime and how it's ultimately impacting local children.
That's a human being, that's a life. And to take that, I mean, I just don't see what's in a person's mind to be able to, to justify it.
Carrie Nunn still wonders why her teenage son Marcus was murdered.
It was the most devastating, it was the worst thing that anybody could ever imagine you have to go through.
A permanent memorial now sits in front of the home where 17-year-old Marcus Jones used to live. It was nearly 1 year ago he was found just a block away, shot and killed. The police still don't know who did it.
Does it get easier? No, I think it gets harder for the simple fact that the longer you're away from them, it's a realization that they're never going to be back.
Nunn's sleepless nights are far from over. She has another son to worry about.
We've talked to the detectives working on Marcus's case, and there's gunshots every night. It's everywhere. There is a problem with the violence with the kids.
Nunn raised both her boys by herself, and she wishes there were more positive role models for young people to turn to.
For the kids, I think we as parents and we as people in the community, we need to step up more too.
And Davenport police agree.
Not necessarily are all role models positive role models.
The police response to gunshots has doubled from this time last year, and it's no surprise to officers that teens are often involved.
The targets of those shots fired have been people under 18, and some of that is because of that's how they figured they can handle their problems, and so it becomes retaliatory in nature.
Davenport Police Captain Brent Biggs says many of the teens he sees involved in a crime are a product of their environment.
And they look to either parents or older siblings or other relatives that are actually serving as role models, like in a negative aspect.
Captain Biggs says kids grow up learning to justify bad behavior, and they're mimicking what they see in their own families.
From personal experience, I know that I've dealt with family members and generations of different families that have been involved in criminal activity. I think in a lot of cases they feel that's the only option they have.
35-year-old Demetrius Howard thinks his family falls under that category.
We're a really big family. We really don't back down from nothing.
He says that could be why so many people have heard of the Howards.
I had a cousin a while back that was murdered.
19-year-old Vincelina Howard was killed in a drive-by shooting outside her grandmother's house in August of 2006.
It's rough, as it would be for any family, just to lose a loved one, to gunshot violence.
In 2012, he lost another cousin, Damien.
We just got a call that he'd been shot in Rock Island.
Police found Damien Howard inside a car that had crashed into a light pole. The 14-year-old had a bullet in his head.
That what bothered me the most about it. For what reason would you have to kill a 14-year-old?
Demetrius says he became a better father to his 4 children after a trip to prison.
Being in jail, seeing him behind the glass, that's what changed it for me.
But his criminal background and his last name have made it hard to find work.
Just to fill out an application and a person probably look at my name and be like, oh man, that's a Howard, maybe we ought to not look at that application.
Davenport Police Captain Biggs says it is hard to rise above the stigma that a criminal past creates, but he's seen it happen.
And even though I have seen, the cycle of criminal activity within families, I've also seen success stories.
And each of these men prove that there is life after crime.
I grew up pretty much on the west end of Rock Island.
Ramsey Vesey, Anthony Jones, and Kelvin Gerard grew up in Rock Island's housing projects back in the 1970s and 80s. All of them served time for selling drugs.
So it was a wrong choice that I made to sell drugs within the community. By just trying to pay a bill, I'm looking at 10 to life.
I was in prison the whole time. My kids growing up.
Now each man is trying to create a better future for themselves and the young people around them, leading by example.
In order for you to become who you want to be, you have to let go of who you used to be.
Kelvin now works to be a good role model for his children.
I just hope that they can see what I did and see it was wrong and grow from it and don't do what I do. They had to grow up without me, but they became young women and men without me.
Now, these men are tackling today's problems with their past experiences, but sometimes that experience doesn't apply.
But the community has changed a great deal.
But see, back then it was like that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child.
And that's what it was.
That's what it was.
'Cause,
Now it's not like that.
It's a sentiment that none echoes.
It takes a community to raise a child.
Tomorrow on your News at 10, a look at who needs the most help and how we as a community can end the cycle of violence.
And these kids need to realize that it's just not one person that loses when this happens. It's everybody. It's all of us that lose out.
All kids are at risk developmentally, of making bad decisions. And of course, it depends on who gets to them first.
Tomorrow at 10, part 2 of our in-depth look at crime as Morgan talks to police, community leaders, and former felons about the change needed in the Quad Cities.